This prestigious major golf and media event will bring significant economic impact to our area. How was Lancaster Country Club selected to host this prestigious event? What goes on before and after the selection to make it happen? How many volunteers are needed, and how can you get involved in it? Our guests today are Barry Deach, who's the championship director, and Stephen Butterball, who is vice chairman for the 2015 event. I'm going to introduce Steve, and then he'll do his presentation and introduce Barry. Steve is a Chambersburg native. He attended Millersville University, where he was a Dean's List student and a 4-year golf letterman. Upon graduating, he got into the insurance business as an underwriter with Hartford Insurance Group. He moved on from the Hartford through my encouragement to work at McConkey Insurance and Benefits, where he's been there for the past 23 years. He's currently a principal shareholder and serves as our executive vice president. In addition to his passion for golf, Steve is also an accomplished fly fisherman. Steve lives in the Hempfield area of Lancaster County with his wife Jody and their 3 children. I'm proud to call Steve my business partner and my friend for the past 25 years. Please welcome Steve Butterball.
Thank you, Hank. I am a very proud York County business owner, and I want to thank everyone for being here today. I'd like to start by giving you a little history on how the 2015 U.S. Women's Open kind of came about, got to Central Pennsylvania, and then I'm going to introduce Barry Deach, our championship director. I am from Chambersburg originally, which also happens to be the hometown of Mike Davis, who is the executive director of the USGA. Mike and I go way back, and to this day are best buds. I have a cabin upstate on Kettle Creek, which is a nice place for Mike to get away. Because as Hank said, I'm a passionate fly fisherman, and so is Mike. For those of you who don't know, Mike Davis from little old Chambersburg is a very public figure. Probably now one of the most powerful men in golf, maybe top 3, top 5. So we're sitting around my cabin one day, and Mike suggested that Lancaster Country Club should host a major USGA championship. He's always been very fond of Lancaster. It's number 3 on his list in Pennsylvania, with our next 2 are behind Oakmont and Marion. This was circa 2006. I then went back, brought the idea to Lancaster Country Club leadership. They decided to move forward, so we had a town hall meeting, which met an 86% approval rating. After a year of planning then, I went to San Diego and I presented our proposal. And we're competing against 5 or 6 other very prestigious country clubs at the time. So that was maybe 2008, or actually was 2008. I presented to the USGA Executive Committee at Torrey Pines during the 2008 Men's Open. And if you remember, that was the epic battle between Tiger Woods and Rocco Mediate. Because everybody was saying, who's this Rocco Mediate guy? So they were, comparing it to David versus Goliath, and Tiger won the playoff the next week, or the next day. I found out later that week that we were awarded the event, and had to keep it under wraps until February of 2009, which was an official USGA press release. So our goal from day one has never wavered for the championship, and that goal is pretty much to make this the best women's open ever and feature Central Pennsylvania as a top destination and a great place to live. A few stats about the event. It should generate over $25 million for the local economy. We think it's going to be the largest sporting event ever in Central Pennsylvania. The attendance should be between 75 and 100,000 patrons. No pressure there, Barry. It is the absolute most important and biggest championship in women's golf, and it will be a Fox Network internationally televised event to over 100 countries. We have Governor Corbett involved. We have Lieutenant Governor Cawley involved. They've been very helpful. For example, they were a liaison to PennDOT for us. for some unique arrangements related to parking and highway egress. Long ago, we engaged local legislators. Special thanks to Senator Mike Brubaker. We engaged various municipalities, the Lancaster Chamber, Central Penn Business Journal, and the Pennsylvania Dutch Convention and Visitors Bureau have been the leaders for us to this point. So the bottom line, everyone's all in. But without stealing any more of Barry's thunder, I have a little introduction for him as well. Barry Deach is the 2015 U.S. Women's Open Championship Director. He has over 20 years working with major golf championships. We are his 24th event, his 8th major, and the 2nd Women's Open. It'll be the 70th Women's Open in the history of the United States Golf Association. Barry is a University of Minnesota grad. He lives in Chicago with his wife and daughter, and his company is called Consortium Sports. So Barry has become a pretty good friend. I've spent a lot of time with him. I apologize for that. But I've really enjoyed watching him marvel over central Pennsylvania. And it's kind of funny to me when he shakes his head in amazement when he sees whoopie pies. And soft pretzels and all these snack foods, you know, and the various farmers markets. I see him shake his head. Are you kidding me? Somebody has a business like that? And he's amazed at our unique, very well-run small businesses in Central PA. Our work ethic, and I think mostly impressed by our passion. And I could keep going with things that amaze him about our area, so you're all part of that, so pat yourself on the back. I also still remember the day, you'll remember where we were, when he told me he has seen more American flags flying in Central PA than he's ever seen anywhere else he's ever been. And that kind of blew me away a little bit because it's second nature to me. I have a flag hanging flying in my house. So that was kind of unique. So imagine this about Barry. This is his business. He's a movie producer, okay? He has 18 months. I know you would have liked 24, but that's all you got. 18 months to build this set called the 2015 U.S. Women's Open for a week-long production. So Barry, come on up and tell everybody why you're going to pull off the best Women's Open ever.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hank. It's good to be here in York. Just a little bit of a story on that. My first introduction to the country club was in November, and they wanted to come in for a town hall meeting. I said, okay, but it's November of 2013. I haven't been there yet. No, you need to come in. Thinking there was going to be about 100 people there. It was standing room only, 250 people, all sitting very ready to go. And I tried to go about an hour without saying the word Lancaster. Being from the Midwest, we like our vowels. So it made a good connection with the membership there. And I will put this in perspective and leave some time for some Q&A. This is my first kind of speech about this championship. Steve mentioned this is my 8th major, 2nd Women's Open, 3rd USGA Championship. I have a long history with the PGA of America. I ran the PGA Championship, was involved in 2 Ryder Cups, PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, Western Golf Association. If you're familiar with the Evans Scholarship Program, the Caddy Scholarship Academic Program, I'm an alumni of the Evans Scholar Program. So golf has been my life. Whether I was carrying a bag as a caddy to playing against Tim Herron. I don't know if you know about the PGA Tour, Mr. Lumpy. We're close in size now, but he used to really whip me around the course. To put this in perspective, it's been about 3 trips between November, October, and December. And I was bragging to all my friends in Chicago that I was going to be just enough south that there wasn't going to be any snow. That didn't quite work out. And hoping I was going to have enough time to get out of the golf course and do what I need to do as far as developing our site plan and developing our plan. Steve mentioned something about being a movie producer or a director. That's what it is. It seems like a lot of work for just 7 days. But it's a pretty massive undertaking. It's a pretty massive impact to the local economy and to the club itself. Just to put it in perspective, we'll have roughly 30 some odd committees, 2,400 volunteers. That does not even include all of the outside services that Steve mentioned. We've been working really closely with Harrisburg. I think I've had now 6 trips back and forth from Harrisburg. I'm starting to know that trip pretty well. But really learning about the venue and about the area. I've also had a unique education as to government here. A lot of townships and boroughs and counties and first class, second class. Trying to remember, trying to keep all that track. It really involves the community. And I think if Steve was up here, he would hearken the fact that I think prior to my arrival, the focus was very much about the golf. It was very much about the golf course, very much about some advanced opportunities for corporate. They've done an amazing job. I hold the record for 2 of the most successful PGA championships in history. And when you look at those venues, they were relatively new for the PGA of America. It was Hazeltine National, and I'm sure you may have known a little course called Whistling Straits, Kohler, Wisconsin, otherwise known as Sheboygan, along the lake. And I put that back to the story when I first got that drawing for that golf course. It's an 11 by 17 piece of paper, pencil drawing. My boss came to me and said, we're going to send you to Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and I was from Minnesota, so we didn't even go across the border. Where's that? And I opened up the venue, and here was this pencil drawing of a links course on water. And I immediately told my wife, I don't know where we're going, but we got to go do this. To put this in perspective, I have managed championships in 10 different states over 20 years. I have never called my wife until I came here and said, I just saw your house 12 times. And I think it's harking back a little bit for me to my childhood, growing up in southeastern Minnesota, in Rochester, Minnesota. Very similar community. You may have read some of the articles, like my first interview from the newspaper. I said I was in a Panera having lunch, and I just took it all in and looked at the people around there, and it was just like I was home. So in many, many ways, you line up the analogy of a first time for a major championship. It's an exciting proposition, but it's also a very challenging proposition. And I think that when I look at the venue, I look at the engagement, I look at the commitment, I look at the can-do attitude. This community and the communities and the members of the club, when they say they want to do it, they want to do it. They say we can, they will. You don't get that everywhere in running major championships. So you look at all the things that make for a very successful major championship itself, the first time, or for the future. Lancaster Country Club and the area has that. It has the tourism, it has the hospitality, it has the volunteers, everything from the extraordinary give and watching how that undeveloped to the community itself. I also was not planning to be here. Literally got a call in July of last summer from the USGA and saying, we want to take the Women's Open and we kind of want to crack it open. And I've got a pretty good record of that, and Steve and the rest of the executive committee have been very patient with me when I keep pushing more and more relative to some new ideas. But those new ideas will position Lancaster Country Club in Lancaster County and York County and the greater central PA. That's another component that I mentioned to Steve. There is this is the story I used to tell people when I go back to Chicago. They say, what's it like? I said, well, here are the 3 things that people always do. The first thing they do very, very politely is they tap me on the shoulder right mid-sentence and say, it's pronounced Lancaster. They smile. Number 2, they say, how do you spell your last name again? You know, it must be like a lineage thing. And then the third piece is, how can I help? You just don't find that everywhere. You really, really don't. So it's a unique position to be in. As far as a size of an event, it takes a lot of coordination from outside the club itself. So we've got Manheim Township, East Lancaster Township, Lancaster County Planning Commissioner, Lancaster County itself. We've got a Community Engagement Committee, which is a brand new committee that will involve everything from the city of Lancaster to every township borough in between. It's got to, 20 different agencies that will kick off in about a month. I think that also the other unique piece is, when we're talking about how the industry of tourism is built in here, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which now has Whistling Straits and now has the Open. I'll put this in perspective. A major championship had not gone to the state of Wisconsin in 70 years. They got awarded the 2004 PGA. The success of that event awarded them 2 more PGA championships and a Ryder Cup and a US Open. If you look at the state of New York over the next 11 years, I think there's upwards of 8 major championships, including the Ryder Cup, going to in-state New York. It'd be a highly competitive market. So when you have limited major sporting events that do 2 things. One, drive engagement for the community, brings the community together. But when you're on television for 100 plus, almost about 17 hours in 100 countries worldwide, what do you want them to say? How do you want them to say it? I think we're going to have to educate people how to say Lancaster, right? And that's important. I think also in the year of Fox Television, brand new partnership with the USGA. This is a whole new platform. Fox has never been done golf. This will be their first golf event in 2015 after the US Open. So, and they just announced Joe Buck. You're all familiar with Joe Buck. I think Joe Buck doing women's golf is going to be brilliant. You know, he defines Americana for sure. Now they're going to add Greg Norman in. That's going to be a little bit of a mix. But you combine all those new things and all the new stories that have to be told. This is going to be an exciting event. 300 plus media will be credentialed for the event. Fox Television will have in itself an 1.5 acres just for their trucks. We'll overtake the course in the club for about 9 days, but there's going to be a series of new events that may be part of the process that you'll begin to hear and roll out. We have purposely not gone to market because, one, we wanted to take a very serious approach the very first time for all of you. Typically, that marketing and those opportunities would be started to go well over 6 months ago. We had put a kind of a stop to it. We said, listen, it's all about this community as a starting point. Let's start from there. So you'll start hearing about us in the marketplace. Volunteer opportunities typically in the past have gone 3 to 4 months. We expect those to be done in about 2 weeks. Those opportunities will start around this year's U.S. Women's Open in June, and then you'll hear about us on the 1st of July relative to how we're going to present offerings to go out to the course. Juniors for this opportunity, if you have a family, is free, 17 and under, so that's going to be unique. On top of it, the club has done such a wonderful job through Steve and Jerry Hofstetter, our general chairman. We've had to expand our corporate opportunities. And they have been very patient with me relative to utilizing a lot of stuff at the country club. You really want to do that, Barry? Yes. So I want to leave an opportunity for questions. This is your first opportunity to get an inside look. Again, 30 plus committees, 2,400 volunteers. That doesn't even include our outside services. We probably have another 12 committees outside of that. So overall, leadership-wise, we're up to about 100 people. Right? These are just co-leaders that are out there making some kind of investment and making sure this is successful. I would say traffic is going to be interesting. But there are utilization of resources from the very top of state government down to county government that have been involved in past championships in the past. They know how important it is. But I will tell you that early discussions are already underway for future championships. And I would vote today. If there was a vote and I was at the table, I would vote today. Yes. Not only from a golf course perspective, but mostly from a community standpoint. And it's palatable. So you're in a very enviable position when you look up and you look at other venues around the country that Steve mentioned about competition. It's typically major markets, West Coast, East Coast, and maybe Chicago once in a while. So you're in an enviable position that has a long-term impact for the community. So I'll open it up for a couple of questions if anybody has any.
How big is the budget and where's the money come from?
The bucket's running in millions of dollars. It's all self-funded relative to how we do for corporate hospitality, ticket sales, merchandise sales on site. I would tell you that the Women's Open is not always a financial windfall for the USGA. Maybe that's why they call it. Any other questions?
This is more about the Open in general, but with the men's and women's going on at the same course this year, can you give me insight on what drove that decision and how it's going to impact the following year?
Yeah, great question. The question, if you didn't hear it, was relative to this year's U.S. Men's Open and Women's Open at Pinehurst back to back. I can't tell you as to the decision at all. I know it was predicated on David Fay, who preceded Mike Davis in the executive committee at that time. My personal opinion, this is just my personal opinion, having been in the game for a long time, two things. One, the amount of exposure that it will bring the U.S. Women's Open. If you understand that the Women's Open is the only major professional women's golf event on broadcast television today. So the fact that it's going to be paired very quickly around the U.S. Men's Open, the media lift will be, and exposure will be fantastic. So you'll listen to some of the leaders in women's golf and they'll say, that's great. I think the other second part of this is about the golf course, right? The questions you've been hearing about that. Here's my personal opinion. If you follow golf, international golf, and golf in the Olympics, right, starting at Rio or maybe some other venue, it's both a men's and a women's competition, but they've never tested that on one golf course. I think that the USGA will have the only data in the world of golf about how to conduct a men's and a women's golf event on the same course in a matter of a week to 2 weeks, and it's pretty big for them with the International Golf Federation. So moving forward, if you were at a meeting in Switzerland and you're talking about the Olympics in golf, USGA with Mike Davis and his team will have that data. Nobody else will be able to share how they did it. So I think it's an enviable position for them, long term. So you guys have all been signed up as a committee chair, so I don't know if you knew that. We have your data. Any final questions anybody might have? Yeah.
What's the biggest initial challenge that you've run into using a smaller metropolitan venue, and how are you overcoming it?
That's a good question. I think I would probably sum it up in novelty. Right? So novelty in this is both a double-edged sword. It's fantastic because it's new, but it's also you're setting precedent. So what may have been thought of 6 months ago, that's the other part of education in the club, is to say any major sporting event, you're not quite sure where the idea is going to come from. You have to be open to spontaneity, to be quite honest, because it's all new. And you only have one shot. It's not like I have a year-over-year business. I just lost 2 days, right? And the cameras are going to go on no matter what. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, in this marketplace, is to do it right, and do it right the first time. And that means everything from opportunities for local, like we could go out and market volunteers on a national basis very quickly, but we haven't. We specifically have honed in on local to give every local opportunity the first take. When we go to market with tickets, those offerings may be only available for a short period of time because we're concentrating on local. So the value proposition is really good. I think the other piece is two parts. If you haven't been to a major championship and you're talking about a golf tournament, you're like, Roach States, $5 to get in, right? Or it's complete opposite, which is, how are you going to do this? This is going to be massive. So it's two extremes, and it's kind of more of a hybrid of both, right? So keeping expectations in the right place will be important, but then taking advantages of the great things that are here. You know, it's like learning about First Fridays. What does that mean? I don't get it, right? So I'm trying to ask every question about anybody who knows about the success of First Fridays and how do I apply that? Or tasting my first whoopie pie. You know, we have structures that I have never introduced at a golf championship ever in 20 years that were introduced here. Because it's, you know, down the street. I'll have the highest number of local vendors I've ever had for a championship. That's both scary and exciting at the same time. But it's all here. And if you all, I don't know, I'm sure many of you have not heard, but this whole rock limits thing, Troy, Claire Brothers, Atomic Design, and Tate Towers, PEDG Group, I've met with them up in, already. They're going to be involved in the championship, the design and the experience. The only thing missing is a tenting company, an electrical HVAC company, and a bleacher company. But everything else is here within about 20 minutes. That's absurd. That's like, in my world, that doesn't exist. So when you look at what Rock Athletics is going to end up becoming in that campus, my example would be it's going to be the Silicon Valley of special events. Because they've gone the highest they can within the entertainment industry, so they're going to start moving sideways and start capturing more about special events. So that Rock Athletics campus concept is really, truly long-term strategic positioning for this area. I may have my office there by the time this thing's done. All right, well, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much.